So thank you everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you taking some time out of your afternoon. Today's topic is maximizing the reach and value of your content. My name is Emily Bauman. I'm the communications manager at the St. Louis Community Foundation. And I have here with me Greg Ampadu, communications intern at the St. Louis Community Foundation, and Jake Huber, creative director and partner at SPLYCEHOUSE, and Levi Kirby, director of photography and partner at SPLYCEHOUSE. So just some quick housekeeping real fast. We are going to have a Q&A session after the training. The training will be about half an hour. Then we'll have half an hour for questions. So you're welcome to drop those in the chat as we go, and we'll look back at the chat at the end of the training. And then also once you're done, you're welcome to come off mute and ask Jake and Levi questions directly. This training is being recorded. The link is going to be available on our website, www.givestlday.org, and we'll also be able to share a PDF of the presentation. So Jake and Levi, I will let you guys go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Emily, and thank you, Greg, for having us. And shout out to St. Louis Community Foundation. We'll just get things kicked off right here and get started. So the first slide we're going to start with is content is king. We know that video marketing is obviously content is driving all marketing, whether that's written words, audio, photos, or in our case, as content creators, video. So video is one of the best means of communication in marketing. So we just wanted to start with that slide. We're going to talk a lot about that and how to structure content. Just to give you a quick rundown on who we are, we're SPLYCEHOUSE, and we launched last year, January 1st, 2022. We're a full service video production company. And as Emily mentioned, I'm Jake Huber. I'm the creative director. And then this is Levi, my business partner. He's also the director of photography. We're really not here to talk much about SPLYCEHOUSE. We just thought we would introduce ourselves since we'll be the ones talking today.
So yeah, just a quick kind of pre-game overview here. One thing that we live by, and we actually talked about this before we even launched SPLYCEHOUSE, that we believe every company is a marketing company first, and that includes us. It doesn't matter what you're selling, who your audience is, if you're B2B, B2C. In our opinion, that doesn't matter. Everyone is and should be a marketing company first. And so some of the topics we're going to dive a little bit more into today, just creating a strategy. We call that part of our process pre-production, but strategy is huge when it comes to maximizing value and maximizing content that you can spread across your calendar. And then what might be the most important point, which we're hoping to do for you today, is to bring value. This whole content game and branding and marketing game is all about value to your audience, and we'll get more into that as well. Consistency is key. I like to say quality is subjective, consistency is objective. Being consistent is something that we can all do regardless of our skill level of production and content creation. Branding is a long-term game, not short. A lot of people, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here, but a lot of people mix branding with sales, and a lot of people want results overnight and specific ROI. And we're not really talking about much of that today. We're talking about branding, which is a game that requires patience and is not going to happen overnight. And then, which I just bled into my final here. So branding and marketing is not sales, in our opinion. They should be treated very differently. We're not trying to sell anything here. We're talking about brand awareness and audience growth.
And so what we would start with, if we're going to talk about branding and content creation, you have to start with a strategy. A lot of people don't even consider this, and you may be thinking, where do I even start? I don't think you have to overcomplicate this. Your strategy can be refined as you get moving forward into your process, but two things that we started with that we wanted to consider, and when we launched SPLYCEHOUSE, what we found was we were spending so much time building the foundation of our organization that by the time we were ready to start, that we went to market and we were ready to start doing our own content strategy, we didn't have a strategy. So what ends up happening is you're taking time each day to think about your content. You have to obviously create that content and then distribute that content. And if anybody here creates content, they know how long that can take. And so that's not a very good strategy. So we had to get down to brass taxes and really figure out what could we start with. And two things to consider to not overcomplicate it, to get started: entertainment and education. These are two things you should be considering, and just go high level with that. So whether or not entertainment might be a little harder, because that depends on your self-awareness, if you're good on camera, or if you're good in a podcast, whatever it may be. But education is a little bit more simple, because you might be industry experts in a certain subject matter. So you can certainly develop your content around things you understand, and that could be the education side. If you can combine both entertainment and education, you've really hit the nail on the head, because I think both of those combined can be really effective pieces of content. And then, so as we've seen over the last few years, short form video content is what's driving everything. Not to say that long form is not useful. Obviously, with Netflix and streaming services, like, a lot of people still like long form content, but from a day-to-day content strategy, short form video is a really effective, quick way to reach your audience. So just to throw out there, the two platforms right now with the most underpriced attention, you have to consider LinkedIn and TikTok. And it also depends on your brand. I think you should very much consider all the platforms, also Facebook and Instagram. But when we talk about underpriced attention, we're really talking about the organic reach of these platforms. For us, we are B2B, so LinkedIn is a little bit more of a focus, because we have the ability to understand our audience, our demographic. You can connect with people on LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn organic reach is really insane right now. We don't know how long that's going to last. It's one of the only platforms that I know of where you could like someone's content, or even comment on their content, and it shows up in their feed. So now all of their audience sees it. So if Levi and I are connected and he likes my post, now all the people he's connected with that I may not be connected with see it in the feed. And again, we don't know how long that's going to last. So from a B2B perspective, that's a really effective place to be creating content and distributing content. TikTok is obviously is the most recent platform, and has garnered a ton of attention from a lot of people. So TikTok, I would say, is probably a little bit more B2C, but it's not something we neglect, because we're still building an audience and we're still branding through that platform. So just consider those two things from as two platforms, and then consider the two entertainment and education from a strategy development.
And then, so yeah, leading into the content itself, as I highlighted in the beginning, at the end of the day, it's all about bringing value. I mean, value is what is going to help grow your audience. The title of this presentation, maximizing value and growing your audience. Value is the fast track to doing that, no matter what shape it takes or what it looks like. And in our opinion, again, and we're not. All of this we're experimenting with on a day-to-day basis. We're not saying we're perfect. We're not saying we have all the answers. We're just simply, sharing our experience and our learnings with you, and knowing your audience is crucial. I mean, that probably goes without saying, but it's easy to forget, and it's even harder to exercise, especially as you get busier and grow. But knowing your audience is crucial. And to Jake's point about LinkedIn and TikTok, LinkedIn and TikTok have two very different audiences that you might be reaching. TikTok skews much younger, informal. LinkedIn skews much, a little bit older, much more professional. But they both have insane organic reach, to Jake's point. And then knowing your audience is important, but then also engaging with them is as important, because you don't ever want it to be a one-way conversation. You don't want to be talking at people. You certainly don't want to be selling, in our opinion, based on on what we're talking about today. And so, and not to mention having a two-way conversation with your audience, the algorithms of these social media platforms really love that. So, I mean, just from kind of a selfish standpoint, it makes a ton of sense as well, but it's going to help drive that brand awareness and ultimately, hopefully, that brand loyalty. which then feeds into number 3 here. Understanding the platforms is a huge part of that, because again, you're going to communicate with someone on LinkedIn much differently than you're going to communicate with someone on TikTok. And we have some examples that we're going to show here in a little bit. But yeah, so knowing your audience, understanding the platforms, and engaging. You should try to make everything as conversational and as two-way as possible, and try to avoid that one way, just putting content at people instead of for people and with people. And just a couple little here on the right, some quick tips in regards to creating content. I mean, as you guys know, we're all scrolling. A lot of this content is consumed on people's phones these days, and half the battle, if not more, is just getting them to stop scrolling long enough to read 2 words off of your content. So start with a hook. And again, this is specific more so to video production, which is what we know, which is what we're, our professional skill set. But start with the hook. I mean, the most important part of a video is the first 3 seconds. When you're talking about social media content, you got to grab them. And then when you do grab them, you got to keep them. So, we've experienced that keeping the pace up, faster just pace is important, and just helps with that engagement. And
now we'll talk about consistency, because obviously, as Levi said earlier, consistency is objective. Your creative is subjective. Some people, I mean, we could talk about Netflix shows, and Levi may like a show that I don't like. And so you have to stay consistent, because that also tells you what your audience is like. And so you can test different pieces of content. You can understand your audience a little better. You can refine the strategy through consistency. You can see what's working. I know, as a video production company, especially as young as we are in the business, barely a year old, I still think we do. I can say confidently that we probably do more than most people, and I know we don't do enough. And one of the things I stress about is, obviously, our branding comes second to client work, and we're busy with client work. So how do we figure out how to be consistent? And we will talk a little bit more about that, but things that you can do is really start strategizing over, the pre-pro stages, which is basically before you ever go to film, the strategy that we talked about, defining that, and then before you ever film a piece of content, what can you do to maximize that content? If you have one subject matter you want to tell a story on, is there something else you can add in there to create multiple pieces of content from that one subject matter? Is it a longer form video that could have little pieces pulled out of it? So you really should plan ahead to maximize as much as possible. It might take a little bit more time. It might take more post-production time, but at the end of the day, you're maximizing your content. So that is going to give you more consistency to share out to the world. And then through those pieces of content, you can, as I said earlier, you can then kind of determine what your audience is engaging with more. And then then what content to create more of. So some processes to better create content. You could lock in one location. If we see this all the time. If we're doing interviews and somebody wants us to do 5 interviews in a day, but they're in different locations across St. Louis, that may not be a 1-day shoot. That might turn into a 2-day shoot. So you're adding more time right there. As I mentioned, creating multiple pieces of content from maybe one pillar content or a larger form piece of content, or even just having different ideas so that when you go to create that content, you're creating multiple pieces at one time. One option is podcast. They're a great option. It's a little bit more challenging if you're adding video to it, but a podcast, you could talk for an hour and then pull little bite-sized pieces of content out of just one podcast. So at the end of the day, I think we're talking about this, but I want to note that we actually live into this, and we're not just here to say you should be doing this. We actually do this, and we will show you on the next slide one strategy that we came up with last year that has been super effective for us. It is grown our TikTok to almost 9,000 followers in just that year. Our Instagram is over 5,000. Those are just some of the numbers, but it's really doing a good job of keeping us consistent and allowing us to create content. So let's just go to the next slide and we'll show what that looks like.
So I'm going to show the first example here, and then I'll kind of talk about it a little bit, and then I'll show you a second example. Hopefully you guys can hear and see this fine.
A tool you should always have with you on set. Check it out. The Leatherman, one of the most versatile tools on the planet. This offers so much in such a small, compact device. Pliers, screwdrivers, knives, and so much more. If you're a gripper AC, you need this in your bag. And now you know.
So before I play the second one, this series is called Quick Tips. And this is pretty, we're leaning into the education side of things that we talked about earlier. And it doesn't seem like much, honestly. I know just watching that video, but for people in our industry, it's literally just quick tips. A lot of it's very novice stuff. And some of it is more involved, but it's the great thing about this is it's in our studio setup. We can shoot like 25 of these in one day. So we're not setting this up every day and wasting a bunch of time. Like we'll set it up, we'll find a day that works, and we knock out like 25 of these. So you're talking like a month or two of content once these are, once they're cut together. So it's a lot in one day. It's one location, it's repeatable, it's scalable. And even on the post-production side, it's essentially a template. Same graphics, same it's very, very repeatable.
I would like to add to that really quick. Also, we spend a lot of time in the pre-pro where we develop our ideas, and we use a software where we put all those ideas of what we don't sit down and try to figure out what are we going to talk about today. We list them all out. And then when we sit down, we knock out 25 because it's the same setup. So then the theme is also created, the music and the graphics. We only created that once. It's rinse and repeat of dropping in the footage. So now, we're probably, one of our team members is probably posting one right now to our Instagrams because we have these that we can roll out. So while we're busy with client work, all we have to do then is distribute this content. And what Levi will show you on this next video is another version of that, but in a similar style.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and play this one.
Here's one way to help your editor quickly find what they're looking for. Check it out. The first thing your camera sees is going to end up being the thumbnail in the projects file. So make sure your slate is in frame and in focus, and that'll help your editor go through the clips much quicker. So before you start rolling.
Now, also, you'll notice that we started with the end. The way we cut this together was YouTube Shorts, TikToks, and Instagram Reels, which are all the short form video platforms. They will just loop a video over and over. So we actually learned that if we loop the video, somebody might be watching the whole video and then not even realize they start watching it again, which tells the algorithm that they are watching the video multiple times, which is when we started posting these were getting double the amount in engagement and viewership of any other video we were posting. And that's just simply understanding the platform, and something that we just realized, hey, we can kind of almost trick the platform into getting more engagement. And then also what we do is, because we knock out maybe 25 of these in a day and then roll them out throughout the course of a month or two, some of these, when we go back and looking at the data, we can determine which videos are doing better than others. Some of these have gotten 80,000 views, and then we can look at that and say, oh, maybe we talked about, how to film better footage on an iPhone, and maybe that engages with our audience a little bit more. So why don't we make more videos that are surrounded with the iPhone? Because maybe, the Leatherman video here didn't do as well. So that is how we can then start to refine the strategy. And by the way, this is just our educational creative strategy that we started from day one when we built SPLYCEHOUSE, to just start building brand. I think what I was talking about in terms of stressing out about not doing enough content is that, there's other things we could do to probably have a different strategy to get more actual client work. But right now we're just focused on making sure we can keep posting content. And this is a great way to keep the brand alive and relevant.
And top of mind. Yeah. And kind of, I have one thing to add, but it kind of segues into kind of what the next.
A tool you should always have.
Here's one way to help your editor quickly find.
I knew I was going to do that, even though I practiced not doing it. So yeah, Jake kind of touched on, and I'm stealing his slide here just for a second. Jake kind of touched on podcast as a good option, but I do just want to note too, I know there's probably some people thinking, well, you guys are a video production agency, so you have all the fancy cameras and the lights and the mics, and that is true. But everything that we're showing you here, you could do on an iPhone with a $30 mic from Amazon. I mean, the iPhones are remarkable. And actually this example of a cut down that we did for our podcast, the very first podcast we ever did, we actually did on GoPros. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there that we do have some of the fancier stuff, but that is a luxury, not a necessity.
I think the biggest takeaway here, and I know there's a lot of people from nonprofits, and maybe you're developing a video that you need a video production company to go film because it maybe is a video that's designed to build fundraising at an event, for instance. But what about the rest of all the rest of the year where you're just silent on social media and nobody knows anything about the brand? This is where we suggest, you can do this internally, whether or not you have a creative person on staff or somebody that likes to do this type of stuff. You on an iPhone, they're only getting better. And as Levi said, you can find mics that plug right into the iPhone. You can find some window light. It doesn't have to be especially if it's an educational video, it doesn't have to be the most highly produced video in the world. It's as long as it's getting the message across and you're consistent with it and you're learning from your audience and seeing how that goes and then developing from there. But that's just a suggestion that we're trying to make to really bring value that no, you probably shouldn't be hiring a SPLYCEHOUSE to go create your daily content. This is stuff that you guys can do internally within your own staff.
Yeah. And back to the first slide, content is king. It's all about the content and the value. Like Jake said, there is a time and a place when, it's great if you call us, but yeah, we're actually suggesting that you don't, and you find ways to do this internally. And there's lots of solutions to help with that consistency.
And so now we're on the podcast slide, because midway through last year, once we really started rolling as a company, and the quick tips were really building our social media and our branding, but we realized, okay, well, that's touching a kind of a niche market. And I'm sure a lot of questions will get brought up like, well, how does that bring you work? And maybe somehow that funnels back to our website and people can see that we actually do more than just quick tips and can offer more than that. But also we were thinking, well, that's just one strategy that's working, that's still getting our brand out there and relevant. So we developed another one, which was what we talked about earlier, which was a podcast, because we knew this was a great way to invite guests on, industry experts. Here, Dave in this picture wearing the 3D glasses is a Sports Illustrated photographer. We got to bring him on, and now his audience gets to see what we're doing. And by the way, we're calling this the PREPRO Podcast. You can check this out. But this is a really great way to do an hour-long segment maybe, and then take pieces of that, chop that up for LinkedIn, because maybe this is a little bit, we could talk a little bit more business or create the conversation to be a little bit more tailored to like a B2B or a business, more professional audience. Thank you. Versus, just our niche industry audience with filmmaking. So in one example of that, this was the first episode. We refined this podcast a lot, but the first episode we chopped up. And so this next, here's an example of us cutting just a little segment out of, I believe this was a 30-minute episode.
The answer to your question is like, we really just want to provide value to whatever audiences we find ourselves in front of, and so yeah, value is kind of the name of the game.
And we're having fun doing it.
You're damn right. I'm having a good time.
I'm doing this for us.
You need to wrap
This
it
is
up.
only just for me. Okay.
Just Bill. All right, we got to wrap it up.
Okay, so we wanted to pull that segment specifically because we truly do, the biggest takeaway is we truly do want to bring value. And I also mentioned in there, we're doing this for us. It was kind of a joke, but your content, you have to bring value, but a lot of people will get on and just do it because they have to, because they realize how important social media is today for branding. But if you're just doing it because You have to do it. You're probably going to turn it into sales. You're probably not going to care much about the content. And then it's really, truly not going to bring value. That's why we specifically pulled that soundbite, because that's truly how we believe in what we're doing. Is we really enjoy we got into this business because we're creative and we like to create content. So we're lucky that we get to do this on a daily basis and we get to come up with these ideas. But everything we do, we're more and more trying to focus on what our audience might want to see. And then we have to enjoy creating that content.
Yeah. And just from a tactical standpoint, just to reiterate too, that it's a great way, because I know a lot of you are just probably still thinking about how you have no time to do this. And this is a great way to where we have the hour, hour long podcast, but then we can literally spend a little bit of time chopping that up into 20 little segments like that. And then boom, there's your content calendar for a month. Again, like we're saying, similar with the quick tips, like it's finding a way to utilize the little time that I'm sure that you have to create as much content as possible and then spread it across your content calendar for a month or longer.
I want to add to that because we understand how much time this takes. And he's right. We are extremely busy. We're building a new brand, a new business, and we're trying to maintain clients, and we're a small team. So we have a ton of stuff. To be able to be sharing content almost daily is only because when we get a day that we plan all this out, so I can write down all the ideas we want to have for our next podcast, our quick tips. We have all those written down. So when we have that free day, we go and we knock all of it out. And then it just becomes post-production when we get to that. It's not, we're not creating content for ourselves every single day. At most, it's once or twice a month. So just consider that. That's the value we're trying to bring here is how can you create more content consistently that brings value at scale? So we'll go to the next.
The answer to your question is like, we really just want to provide.
I guess we're watching.
We both double tapped the video play. So yeah, I mean, this is essentially just a recap of what Jake just said. But again, just a reminder, we're talking long-term here. You're not going to see 100,000 views and 6 clients out of your first piece of content. I mean, this is, again, we're looking at this very differently than sales, which is on the last slide coming up here. Jake's going to talk about, but we're talking about branding. We're talking about brand awareness. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about being top of mind. So like all these TikTok videos that we're doing is probably not, I don't think it's ever landed us a client, but in 3 years, someone who saw our quick tips, the first company they're going to think of is SPLYCEHOUSE because they've watched 5,000 of our quick tip videos. You know what I mean? So staying top of mind is huge. And that starts with a good strategy, as we've stressed quite a bit already. But I mean, strategy, you have to, I just heard a quote the other day that good leaders often have good intent, but don't act intentionally. And strategy is about having intent and operating with intent. And again, we've said it 100 times already, the content must bring value, and consistency is key to this long-term game. Okay,
so to wrap it up, I just want to go back to the number one takeaway here, other than creating content at scale. The little tidbits of how you can actually create content at scale is how you should be thinking about your marketing and branding, and not in a sales-driven manner. I think marketing is so closely tied to sales, but I don't think I think these should be very separate, unless you're running paid ads or there's a certain advertising strategy you have that's targeting certain people through maybe paid media. That's a little different. But when we're talking about organic content, daily content, if you start driving your organic content with sales because you don't see the ROI and posting quick tips or cut downs of your podcast, or how that, because I can promise you, and some of you may already know this, it takes a long time. Building a brand takes a long time. But if you are turning it into sales in your organic post, you're doing the opposite of bringing value. You're extracting value. People can sense that. They know when we make these quick tips And when we do these podcasts, we, like I said, we truly enjoy doing this and we want to give to an audience and we're not expecting anything in return. And some of this doesn't have a direct ROI, but we understand that we've gotten to this place because our brand is so much more relevant than somebody that's not doing this. And it's only going to continue being the case because of what we see with these social media platforms and how much video content is driving everything. So all we want to do is continue to just bring as much value as possible. So we never, if you go through any of our content, we're never asking for anything. We're not telling somebody, hey, we can make videos like this for you. We don't do that because they can figure that out on their own, especially if we can create content that touches an audience and makes them maybe interested in potentially utilizing us for creating that content for them, just in the way we create. So just always consider that. That's a huge takeaway, that a lot of people make that mistake. And I think you'll see a lot of that online, but don't get confused and jump right into sales because you see other people doing it. I don't think that's a very good approach. And I think that could tarnish the brand a little bit when you don't keep those separate. Again, you should really actually care about what you're creating. And that's hugely important. So I think Gary Vaynerchuk says this a lot: be the TV show, don't be the commercial. I mean, I don't know how many times a commercial would pop up and, you know, you just look away or you look at your phone. Nobody wants to be sold to, but people will tune in all day long. And I know we get a lot of comments like, these quick tips are great. You know, we really enjoy this, or throwing us feedback on, hey, could you do a quick tip on this? And we've gotten so much engagement because we're really trying to be the TV show where people can tune in and see, hey, there's another quick tip. Oh, I'm tuning in. It's the same thing. And the biggest difficult thing we're having right now is just not being able to scale this even more and move away from just quick tips and just do even more of what we have because we're creative people and we have the ability to do that. So I'll just run through this again. Give without expectations. Enjoy the process. You should really enjoy what you're doing. Don't be afraid to fail. I think that comes down to consistency. When you're creating content, you don't know what's going to hit. I mean, we've had some stuff go viral that we didn't know why, and we still don't know why. You can't predict it and you can't create it. You can't say, oh, I'm going to make a viral video today. It'll never happen. Unless you know something I don't know. And then, of course, engage with your audience as much as possible. And then the last thing I'll note is there's this, if you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, who we really value because he's a really great marketer and he's doing this, and he'll give a lot of good advice if you follow what he's doing. He talks about something called brandformance. And if you happen to maybe want to run sales or paid ads, which we don't do, we're not in a place to even consider that. But even if you're not doing that, brandformance is a way to take your organic content. And if you're consistent with it and you're sharing it enough, you can see which pieces of content your audiences are engaging with more. And then you can make more content created around that specific topic. And you could even turn that into potentially paid media to target people based off, because they're basically telling you the audience isn't lying. They're going to tell you whether or not they like it or not. If you're not getting engagement and your content's not doing well, it's because it's not good enough. That's always the answer. So the brandformance side of things, you can really understand what your audience wants to see. So,
well, and just to clarify, maybe it might not be that it's not good enough. It's just not the right message.
Well, that too.
Again, quality is subjective, as we already discussed, but more so just, knowing what works with it's just about knowing what works with your audience and then using that information to engage even more, So, I mean, it's free feedback. So, utilize it and be willing to learn from it.
Well, and I do want to add to that, because to the point of it not being good enough isn't always the case. We have had some quick tips that when we posted them, they didn't really do much in terms of engagement or viewership that any more than any other quick tip that we had in the past. And then maybe 4 months later, it'll get 80,000 views out of nowhere. And that's something that is the long-term game, where that's how these platforms are working, especially with YouTube Shorts that's tied to Google, and it's a search engine and people can search the videos now. You never know what piece of content you create now that next year might take off because it's relevant, more relevant at that time. So that's, again, goes back to the consistency side of things.
And yeah, and that's what we have. So I know we went a little longer than 30 minutes. So thanks for having us. And we're open to any questions.
Thank you both so much. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. I know that you've given me a lot to think about. We haven't had any questions come through in the chat, so I do just want to invite anybody who's here. If you have a question for Jake or Levi, please feel free to come off mute. I actually have a couple questions to get the Q&A started, if that's okay. I was hoping you might be able to talk about the efficacy of using video content on Facebook. You talked a lot about Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube, but I know a lot of our participating organizations, they may have a Facebook page, but no other social media platforms. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of, for some unknown reason, I'm kind of the Facebook guy in our organization, just because I still engage with it probably the most on a personal level. But my brain's first response to the end of your question is, if you're not engaging with other platforms, you should be.
Yeah.
So that's number one. If you're only on Facebook and you're ignoring everything else, I think that's a mistake. But as far as Facebook specific, yeah, I mean, video content is driving those algorithms just the same. They don't have a specific segment for shorts like some of the other platforms do. But just one tip that I will add, that I see people make this mistake a lot. This is like pretty granular, but when you're uploading video to Facebook, upload it directly to Facebook and give it a nice thumbnail. So many people don't do that. And a lot of people will like say, if you want to share a video that's already on YouTube, you'll just share the YouTube link. But then they have to click on that link. It takes them out of Facebook and it takes them to YouTube. You want to minimize the work your audience has to do, especially on mobile. So if you upload a link, a YouTube link or a Vimeo link to Facebook, and then they're scrolling on mobile, they actually have to click it and go into the YouTube app and then watch it. Where if you upload it directly to Facebook, it'll autoplay on their phone as they're scrolling. Like they don't even if they don't stop, it'll autoplay. So it's much more likely, again, that's like a pretty granular piece of advice, but I see a lot of people making that mistake. You want to have as little work as possible for the audience, and you have to gain their attention so quickly. And so yeah, that's kind of my response to that.
Yeah, native videos are always, with whatever platform you're posting on, going direct native and not trying to go from link YouTube to Facebook. The platforms don't like that, so you always want to post directly. And I think people maybe want to post their YouTube link to Facebook because they want to grow their YouTube. It doesn't work like that. And we didn't get too specific. There's so much more specifics we don't have time for, but the thumbnails do matter. I don't know if anybody knows Mr. Beast. He's the largest YouTube, and he's the largest YouTuber. I think I don't know how many YouTube followers he has now. He spent $100,000 recently just to develop a new thumbnail for one of his videos. So thumbnails are extremely important, and you can come back to Instagram, to Facebook, and recreate a thumbnail, and sometimes that can trigger a video to take off like it didn't originally. But to your question too, with Facebook pages, I'm assuming, because I'm not as much on Facebook, but on LinkedIn, if it's anything like LinkedIn, the pages are a little bit more difficult to build because you can't just directly necessarily connect with like peer-to-peer like your LinkedIn profile. So for us, like on LinkedIn, we put a little bit more emphasis on our personal brands, our personal pages, and every now and then we'll share to our SPLYCEHOUSE LinkedIn page, but it just doesn't have the same kind of reach, and it's just a lot harder to build a page, a business page specifically too. So just something to consider, how maybe what you're posting to your Facebook group page, you could be posting to your personal as well, if you're okay with that.
And just one last note, I don't have a ton of information on this, so I don't want to talk on it too much, but I do know that Facebook just came out with a basically a pay-to-play model, similar to how Twitter just released the monthly subscription to be blue check verified. Facebook is doing that now too.
I didn't know
So
that.
yeah, so it's just, these platforms are constantly evolving, and everything that we just said might be irrelevant in 3 months. Who knows? So just reiterates Jake's original point of right now, any platform that has underpriced organic attention, you can capitalize on it, because we don't know how long it's going to last.
And that's why we're really focused on LinkedIn and TikTok, because of the organic reach. We saw what happened with Facebook. It used to have an insane amount of organic reach. It has now gone away. They want you to run ads. We just find it a lot more difficult to try to build our Facebook page. So it's on our list of platforms, it's one of the lower ones, but I understand that it might be useful for different audiences. So
yeah. Just in case anybody here isn't familiar, could you talk a little bit about the difference between organic reach and paid reach?
Yeah,
You want that one?
sure. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. Organic reach is just posting, for free on the content or on the platform. You don't have to pay anything. It's typically what most people here would be used to. Paid media is a lot more complicated. All these platforms, I know Facebook has their business manager, where you can go in and you can target your audiences and run ads. We don't mess with that, because you're basically paying out of some funds you have to create, to sell an audience, so that hopefully you can make all that money back and more. So there's a cost there where, right now you have the ability to create organic content that can reach the audiences. You can direct it a little bit more. It's just going to cost money, and it's a lot. It's not something we even are experts in at all, because I don't run ads. We're not an advertising company. So
yeah, and just to clarify, we're not saying that you shouldn't be doing that, and we're not
Right.
saying that there's not a play. We're simply focused in on marketing and branding, and we just want to be very clear that we think it should be separate from sales. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be selling or that sales should go away.
No.
We're just focused over here, and that's not to say we won't run paid ads in the future. We're just really focused on the power of the audience you can grow organically without having to dive into the pay to play.
And the power of really good content.
Well, yeah, if we were going to start running ads, if we just had the time and the money to just start running ads and target people, the first thing I would do is use that brand formant strategy and go back through all our content and start looking at what's working and what's not, and who our audience is, and then use that to then create content for a paid ad that works. You get a lot of insight through that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's a great reminder, especially if anybody here is from a smaller organization, that you don't have to have a huge advertising budget or a huge amount of money dedicated to boosting your social media posts or creating ads. What really matters is putting content out there that your audience is going to engage with, and it will kind of spread naturally.
I don't think you have to have really any money unless you want to get, a mic for your iPhone. I think you could start creating content today, unless obviously time is money. So you're really just giving up time, but these platforms, they don't cost anything to utilize. And that's a huge benefit, because that wasn't how things before social media existed. You had to pay for a billboard, you had to pay for radio ads, you had to pay for commercials on TV. It's now you can get tens of thousands of people to engage with your content, essentially just giving up your time.
But don't start creating until you have a strategy, or else you're going to waste some valuable time.
Yeah.
Yes, that's definitely a great reminder too. My other note was just curious if you had any tips in particular for very small organizations as they go about formulating their strategy, potentially organizations that may only be 1 or 2 people, and like you said, might only have an iPhone to create content with.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, it was just 3 of us, and now it's still only 6. We're 6 of us now, so we're small ourselves. So I mean, my initial response to that question just makes me think about going back to strategy. I mean, if you're even if you're a one person operation, it's still, strategy is just as important if you're 1 or 500. And just try to maybe block out a day on your calendar where that's your content creation day. And then up until that day, work on the strategy and figure out how much content you can possibly create on that day. And then how you can stretch that across your calendar, your content calendar, as long as possible. Because then you're going to get your consistency, you're going to get your content, and you're going to start being able to see what's working with your audience. Because again, I mean, and back to he talked about Mr. Beast, which the most successful YouTuber in history. I think he's a billionaire. But he says, don't worry about anything until you've created 100 videos. He says, after you've created 100 videos, then come back and let's talk what's working and what's not working. And that sounds like a lot, and it is, but if you're doing daily or every other day posts, that's only a handful of months. So really just get the strategy and start creating is my answer to that question, honestly.
And I don't know if this is super relevant. I just love Mr. Beast for what he's doing, because one of his first videos, he had a client that was going to pay him $8,000 to make a YouTube video. And he said, give me $10,000 and I'll give it away. And they said, why $10,000? He said, it'll look better in the thumbnail. And that video blew up. He gave the whole amount away and just kept building on that, because he truly came from a value standpoint. How do I get more value? And of course, now he's, like he said, I'm pretty sure he's a billionaire now, and he gets to make any piece of content he wants, because he just was focused on doing interesting content that he was thinking about the audience and what they would rather see. So just consider that.
Yeah, you got to stand out in that endless scroll of content. We did have a question come through the chat. I'm going to go ahead and let Greg pass that along to you guys.
Thank you, Emily. So I actually wanted to give some advice. It's not particularly a question, and I wanted to give some advice basically on helping you to get your content out. And this is called the 20/80 strategy. And the 20/80 strategy simply means that you want to focus on sharing 20% of content from other people who are relevant towards your brand, and 80% creating your own content. And what this really does is it takes a lot of the pressure off of you to really create a lot of content, such as like blog posts, and it also drives people to your brand. And the reason I bring up the 20/80 rule is based on the fact that a lot of the content that you create, it will not be shared by other people because they don't have a personal relationship with your brand. You can mention that, like, our brand has achieved this, and it'll get a like, but it cannot be shared by that other company because they really don't have that personal relationship. So this is where the 20/80 rule comes in pretty good, because this is content that is shareable by anybody. If you go to a blog post that's relevant towards your organization and you see it and you share this, other people would have that permission to also say, okay, wow, this is significant research. This is a great blog. I will share that. And by doing that, you're driving eyes back onto your brand just by sharing something that is relevant to your particular brand. So I'll definitely say keep that in mind. It's called the 20/80 rule, and that is simply being able to share 20% of other content, while also 80% of that content comes from your own personal brand.
Thanks, Greg. Great thoughts. So the question that we had in the chat was from Lisa. Lisa asks, you talk a lot about strategy. Can you give us an example or two of what that strategy might look like? Lisa's organization is a drowning awareness and prevention organization.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you're in a much different arena than we are in terms of your audience, for sure. And I did tell Emily this, we're happy to have follow-up conversations more in depth with anyone who wants to reach out to us, just FYI. So, strategy is going to be very specific. Again, going back to knowing your audience. I mean, the strategy needs to be based around knowing your audience, because your message should be all about providing value to your specific audience. So I mean, again, our examples of strategy were quick tips in the podcast most recently, just because quick tips was so repeatable and scalable and gave us consistency. Podcast was the same thing, more tailored to the B2B market on LinkedIn. I mean, with your particular organization, I'm assuming that your message is pretty broadly important to everyone. So yeah, when your audience is everyone, that actually is a blessing and a curse. But yeah, I mean, I think really it's just when you're thinking of your strategy, just because I know a lot of people have smaller teams and limited time, I think it's just figuring out ways to get as much shareable content as possible with the little time that you have. But I'm happy to, I don't have a amazing answer for that, but I would be happy to chat more with you about it, about your specific organization.
Well, and I don't know if this helps, and I don't know enough about the organization and the details about it, but when we gave this talk at the nonprofit marketers event, afterwards, somebody who was involved with nuns and trying to get young people involved in the nun community, I guess, was not sure why TikTok would be valuable. And I pulled up in real time an entire TikTok of nuns of TikTok and how there was an entire community just
like hundreds
based
of
off
thousands
of it.
of people.
There was tons of people. So I just don't know enough about I don't know what you're looking for in terms of specifics on the strategy. Obviously, there's so much that could go into that, but what do you know about the organization? What can you talk about? What can you educate or entertain to get attention of your audience? And starting with that.
Yeah, and I just was thinking that when Jake was talking to you. Yeah, I mean, I guess the simplest thing would just be to, just focus on the education piece. I mean, just start with, I mean, you're likely a subject matter on the topic, so just start thinking about ways you can educate the audience and just start there. And it can be short, it can be simple, and shorter is often better, to be honest. And so yeah, just those are a couple of thoughts. Happy to chat more with you.
Thank you. Yes, if you have questions, you definitely want to take Jake and Levi up on their offer to chat with you, pick their brains. Jennifer, I don't know if you're doing this on purpose or not, but I see that you have your hand up. You are welcome to come off mute and ask your question.
Sure. Hi. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit of an advocate for the Facebook and Instagram. I know you guys speak highly of LinkedIn and TikTok, and nothing against them. I love those as well. But when we look at Facebook, they're switching their platform model as page as an experience. You can join clubs and groups as a page and be a persona as a page. And looking at the benchmark of 41% of fundraising through birthdays being hit this year. So, I mean, anytime someone puts up a birthday fundraiser, 41% of them are getting results. So I'm just kind of just putting that as an FYI, that as far as following, the viral audience you get aren't the ones that are going to be sustainable, but the ones you get slowly over time through maybe other platforms like Facebook and Instagram might be something worth investing some time into. And being able to hit 2 social media platforms via one route, because 80% of Instagram users follow a brand name versus some of them, majority of them being nonprofit. I would not put away those 2 in a pocket. I'd keep those out.
Yeah, no, that's a great piece of advice. And yeah, like I said, I'm kind of the resident Facebook guy for whatever reason. I am a big advocate of it, and we definitely need to make sure that we're placing an importance on all of them. We just with our industry, we've just had the most experience and the most learnings from LinkedIn and TikTok. But no, I 100% agree, and that's great insight.
Yeah, and the TikTok audience, the algorithm is set so forth where if my kid grabbed my phone and started going through my TikTok feed, they would get spreadsheet hacks and ChatGPT. They're not going to get the same feed. If I went on their phone, I'd get Roblox one after another. Yeah. So unless people are actually searching for nonprofit stuff, they would not come up. For me, my advice is to go by location, tagging St. Louis or the city or whatever community you're in. That would have a better result on hitting them on TikTok.
Nice. That's great. That's great. That's a great piece of advice.
Yep. Thanks, Jennifer. I know that for the community foundations social media accounts, we have the highest engagement from Facebook, but we see our highest growth in LinkedIn. So it's always kind of interesting to look cross-platform. And And also the content that we post performs very differently on all the different platforms. So I'm sure that a lot of you are seeing the same thing.
That's certainly a good
Does
point,
any,
and I
oh,
think-
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it definitely depends on your business and your brand too, 100%. Because I think we've had a lot less success on Facebook, but also we don't know everything about Facebook. Some of those things you just mentioned, that's really good to know. So it's good to note that depending on what your brand is and who your audience is, that does matter.
Yeah, and it goes back to our, one of the first slides. Yeah, knowing your audience and understanding the platforms. It's crucial to every business.
And I think understanding your own content too. Like here, I don't have a lot of not only like capacity to do video related content, but also like I don't have a whole lot of stuff to make videos about, which is why like text-based like blog post stuff is kind of more what our content looks like. So we're a really good fit for Facebook and LinkedIn. It's harder for us to really gain traction on Instagram because we don't have the visuals. So it's different for everybody, and it's a struggle for everybody.
Yeah, well, and I don't want to get Jake started on ChatGPT because he'll talk for another 2 hours. But honestly, if you guys aren't utilizing it, it can be a great idea generator. Honestly, you could go type social media campaigns for nonprofit marketers, and it'll give you 10 ideas. I mean, it's not an end all be all by any means, but as far as idea generation and some thought provocation, consider checking it out. But I don't want this guy to.
Could you say what that was again, and we'll put it in the chat?
ChatGPT.
It's this
Chat
new
GPT.
Yeah, it's this new AI that everyone's
basically
talking about.
It's basically.
Oh, it's
Can
that.
I ask a question about that? Because
that's a whole hour-long conversation right there.
just one quick question, I promise.
Yeah.
I've had trouble accessing that.
I
It's
think
been
it's so-
full.
I think that, well, first of all, ChatGPT in like the first 6 days had 1 million subscribers, signups, and they've had more people onto that platform than any social media has ever, like in that amount of time.
Yeah,
So
they blew
I
it.
think, I still get on there and it's overloaded and it says come back later. So I think you just got to keep trying.
Yeah, just refresh the page. I usually, if I refresh it 3 or 4 times, I usually get in. And I think time of day is kind of a factor too. But I'm actually working with, I'm working with a nonprofit who I'm going to be on their board potentially. And I was trying to think of some marketing slogan. I literally went to ChatGPT and put marketing slogan, give me 10 marketing slogans about mentorship. And again, none of them, like I didn't use any of them, but they were all gave me a good like thought jumping point and kind of helped get the wheels turning. So it's a fun tool for sure.
Some inspiration. Maybe you'll have to do a training on that specifically for us next year.
That one's changing by the
or maybe
minute.
it will be able to teach us about itself.
Yeah, it can train you itself. Yeah, maybe.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, certainly if you do, please feel free to hop off mute. We do have, just a minute or two left in our training today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording because I think the conversation is slowing down.